Memphis Wrestling, Dave Brown, right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Solie, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey, guys, and welcome back to the Regional Rasslin Podcast, where we talk the territories. And this week, a very special edition of Regional Rasslin, guys, a milestone here for the program. It's the Big 5-0, the 50th edition. And here with me to celebrate this week, we're going to do more Memphis 1985 with my good man, Gene Jackson. Gene, welcome back to episode 50 of Regional Rasslin.
This is exciting, Ray. Look at me, the greenest member of the Regional Rasslin roster, getting to celebrate the Big 5-0. I'm honored.
Well, how does, we'll quote somebody from the Memphis territory, downtown Bruno. I believe he says, or his mama said, it bees that way sometimes, and it just kind of fell to you. But I'm happy to have you here, man. I'm happy to do more Memphis 1985.
Oh, me too, man. I've been ready to travel back to Memphis and catch up with all our favorite wrestlers down there.
I can't wait.
It's picking up.
Just scrolling over the notes earlier today, I got very excited to get into this one. But before we get rolling, guys, 50 episodes, they weren't all Gene Jackson. Like Gene said, he's the greenest of the group that we have going right now, but certainly all you guys are awesome. But I got to thank our past guests, like John McAdam of the Stick to Wrestling podcast. Of course, John kicked things off with me, the first 3 episodes of Regional Rasslin, covering 1977 in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Got to thank former owner of Ring of Honor, Kerry Silkin, for joining the show, talking about his earliest memories of Capitol Wrestling in the 1950s. Sorry, Kerry, showing your age there, but also his very first trip to Madison Square Garden in the early 1960s, talking about Willie Gilzenberg, the old president of the company. His family just called him Gilly. So that had to be pretty cool, right? And then, of course,
absolutely,
super fan and wrestling historian, Memphis wrestling historian, Steve Crawford, who will be back to analyze some of the things going on right now that we've been talking about, Gene, very soon here on Regional Rasslin. In fact, I got more on Steve in just a second. Also, I'd be remiss without a shout out, of course, to our current partners in crime here on the show. We're talking about Jamie Ward of the Georgia 1981 show, and of course, Roman Gomez, currently covering the UWF in 1986. And I actually had the pleasure of hanging out with both of those guys recently at the Glory Days GrappleCon event down in Orlando. It was a pleasure to meet both of them physically for the first time in person, and had a breakfast with Roman, dinner with Jamie. Jamie's still talking about that 18-ounce steak that he had. Took a picture. It was a beaut.
Man, I was jealous of not only you guys getting to hang out, but man, that's some of those steaks and some of the food y'all were sharing. I mean, fat guy like me, I was definitely missing out. A wrestling convention and great food. Come on.
Yeah, it was a good time. We do have some future names also penciled in here, going to be coming up soon for some fun projects in the not so distant future. So stay tuned for more on that. But I want to go back now, Gene. So we were doing a best of Lawler show, Lawler and Valiant over to Japan. And we got a best of Jerry Lawler show. And at the end of that show, there was this character that appeared. I referred to him as sort of like a traveling carny circus preacher type gimmick. And he dove into this lady's bosoms on the Lawler show. And Steve Crawford, he just sent me this today on Facebook. He said, "Did you ever figure anything out about that mystery guy you were talking about?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he said, "Oh, well, I know exactly who that was." I said, "Of course you do." Apparently, this is a fellow by the name of Jerry Lawler, and I guess you should know the name because he was a famous Southern comic. I thought you knew all the comics. Gene?
See, all right. So I've got to admit something right now.
Okay.
Seeing that name, I did not see all of that episode of the Jerry Lawler show. Somehow, a lot of time I watched these at work, and I guess somebody walked in and I didn't see the end. So I admittedly was just kind of bullshitting my way through that portion of the show when you brought it up. And I never went back and watched it. And so when I just heard the name that you said, I was like, oh, my God. Of course, I know Jerry Lawler. My God, I've heard that name all my life. My dad used to have 8-track tapes.
That would make sense. Yeah, it seemed a little odd. But, it was the end of the episode, so I don't really fault you for that. I mean, it was just like randomly spliced in, like, okay, we still got 2 minutes of time to kill. what are we going to do with this episode? And then that's what we got, was apparently Jerry Clower diving out of his chair into a lady's breasts. So yeah, but yeah, apparently, like you said, a Southern comic, very famous in the 60s and 70s. Steve referred to him as very hee-haw in his shtick.
Yes.
Boy, I'll say. He also said that I was very blessed, apparently, in my life to have avoided Jerry Clower, at least until now. Of course, a comic, but also, I guess Steve says he incorporated a religious angle into what he did a lot of the time. So apparently, just by looking at him, I was kind of on the right track.
Oh yeah, you nailed that one. Absolutely. And it's funny because, usually those like you say, those last couple of minutes of Jerry Lawler show, it's usually some local something, like nothing of any real consequence. So I guess that's why I didn't really think to go back and watch that. But yeah, Jerry Clower's pretty famous in the South, or at least in those days he was.
Well,
so
I'm sure
that was considered Steve, kind of a get for him at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when Steve brought that up to me. But, when I did I didn't go through his whole Wikipedia page. I just kind of Googled him real quick after, Steve told me. But I told him immediately, I said, my grandpa, man, Southeastern Kentucky, and I know damn well he would have known who he was also. So unfortunately,
for sure.
Yeah.
And another little fun fact, if you go back and watch old episodes of Mid-South from around 84, 85, he pops up in a couple little things on Mid-South a couple of times as well. And of course, he would be right in Bill Watts's wheelhouse, of course, Southern religious, the whole nine. So, yeah, if you go back and watch some of that sometime, you'll see him pop up along the way.
I'm sure
and
the
he
Cowboy
looks like he would be a Southern wrestling manager.
He does, doesn't he?
Red suits he would wear and all that. He would have been right at home in wrestling had he not been a comedian.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure the Cowboy loved that type of comedy. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out for anybody who was curious, when I was describing all this, or anybody that went on my YouTube, and much like myself, just, I'm a pretty, I know a lot of the old timey comedians, the old actors, the old everythings. And for some reason that name just escaped me. I don't know how until all these years later, but here we are. Learn something new every week.
That's the thing, man. You are the man when it comes to research. You find these things out, but if you don't, you have someone who will. So I can always count on you to answer those burning questions eventually. So
yeah,
here we are.
Thank God for the loyal listeners, and of course the co-hosts as well. Without all of you guys, I'd be stuck sometimes. And luckily, this is one of those instances where Steve was able to help out, and you were able to back it up after the fact, guys. So yeah, Jerry Clower, go check him out on YouTube. Very interesting character. You can't do that shtick today, but it was fun for the times.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's, like I say, he had tons and tons of albums. He was a well-known public speaker. My dad actually met him a couple of times because my dad worked for International Harvester, and he would come and speak at their yearly managers meetings. And he came to a couple of those and wore that big red suit of his, which was right up their alley for the International Harvester, those big red tractors. So, yeah, to this day, he'll mention every now and again the time he met Jerry Clower. So I'll have to bring this up to him.
Excellent. Well, it's been a couple weeks here since we last did Memphis on the show. So let's do a little recap for everyone. Last time in the Memphis territory, we know Jimmy Hart now gone from the CWA, but replaced by a near clone with twice the height, but about 1/10 of the ability. Okay, maybe 1/100th. More on him later in this episode. But yeah, Jimmy Hart gone from the territory. An end of an era.
Definitely an end of an era. And yeah, I was going to say, when you said 1/10, I was going to say, man, he is being super generous right now.
Yeah.
So I was glad to hear you quickly correct yourself.
Yeah. Jerry Lawler, believe it or not, Gene, also once again the Southern heavyweight champion. And I kind of feel like, if I just save this as a soundbite, I could probably use this every couple weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, who would have thought Jerry Lawler wins the Southern heavyweight strap, but he somehow managed to pull it off.
He sure did. Speaking of title changes, Jimmy Valiant, also the brand new Mid-American champion, at least in the Memphis city anyway, having defeated Iron Mike Sharpe.
Oh, okay.
He beat our boy.
He did.
Mike Sharpe. He has quickly become a favorite here. And if you'd asked me going into Memphis 85, like, hey, man, who do you think we're going to latch on to and really enjoy as a heel? Mike Sharpe would have been at the very bottom of the list, but man, he's done it. He's become a favorite.
I'm looking forward to getting to my notes later. I have some notes that are very similar in fashion to what you just said, so I can't wait till we dive back into that later on. In fact, this is a great story. At the GrappleCon, I'm standing in line and at on one of the Q&A panels, And a fan of the show comes up to me and he says, "Oh, I love Regional Rasslin. I love you." He's talking to me and Jamie. "I love you. I love the show. I love it. I love it. I love it." I said, "What do you love most?" He goes, "Oh, the Iron Mike Sharpe bit, the okay." And he just, every time I saw him, he go, "Oh, okay." So it really caught on. Who knew Mike Sharpe was going to boost the ratings here on Regional Rasslin of all the names that we've encountered?
Amazing.
It is.
Love that.
It's amazing. Yes, it is. Nationwide, international star is Iron Mike Sharpe here in 2024. In other Memphis news, the Terminators still employed somehow.
Well, there's always got to be bad news amongst the news, so hopefully that's the worst of it.
Can't get much worse than that. And according to Troy Graham, Steve Kern's daddy, apparently still shell-shocked.
Oh, bless his heart. He's
going to ride that into the ground.
He's not giving him any breaks at all.
No, definitely not. As that's going to wrap it up. That's everything that happened last time around. So we're going to head back into the DeLorean once more here now. We're going to head back to 1985. And on the other side, it's more Memphis Championship Wrestling television right here with me and Gene Jackson. All right, Gene, away we go. Saturday morning TV, February 16th, 1985, WMC TV5 Studios, Memphis, Tennessee. Lance Russell and Dave Brown hosting. Are you ready for another week of championship wrestling?
I'm ready, and let's hope that Jimmy Hart has taken all the snow and bad weather with him. Get back to some normalcy here.
Yeah, off to New York City. As straight away, Lance Russell announcing that Jimmy Hart is indeed, he confirms it, gone for at least the next year, or at least until Vince fires him, because you got to believe, if Jimmy didn't work out in New York, he was going to be back here in the Memphis territory.
Oh, without a doubt. Look at guys like, Dundee and Dutch, and, they would go off and they'd do a year or two in Mid-South or in Charlotte. They always made their way back to Memphis. Buddy Landell, the list goes on and on.
That's right, brother. I said it at the top of the show, but I'll say it again. An end of an era. I actually had a couple of different listeners online say that when Jimmy Hart left the territory, it changed forever. It never came back to that feeling, the old, homegrown Memphis talent feeling. It just was never the same ever again.
I think that's a fair statement, and I certainly don't know that any other manager lived up to Jimmy Hart. There were some decent managers over the years, heel managers, but right. I think Jimmy Hart set a very high bar that I don't know that anyone quite lived up to from that point on. So they make a good point.
Now there's only one Jimmy Hart. There's only so many top level managers, and for anybody that only knows Jimmy from the cartoon era of the WWF, you can even go back to 85. He was still kind of transitioning from that Memphis shtick, so he was still pretty good as Slick. Like when Slick first came in, he still had that dirty, scary, you don't want to mess with him in an alleyway. I got a switchblade type gimmick, right? And then, obviously he turns into the pimp-like manager of Akeem and whatnot, dancing in the ring. But Jimmy Hart, when he first came in, he was a little darker too.
Oh, yeah. It took him a little while to fall into the caricature almost of, what they would become out of their territory days and into, like you say, the cartoon world of the World Wrestling Federation.
It took him a little bit to evolve, but yeah, the early Jimmy Hart in the WWF is fairly close to what we got in Memphis. So yeah, unfortunately he is gone, and we're going to have to see who replaces him as the show gets going here. Jerry Lawler going to arrive immediately right out of the gate, announcing that, 52 weeks starting right now without Jimmy Hart here on Memphis. It's going to be a lot longer than that, Gene. As the King brought Jimmy into wrestling, and now he says he took him out. Well, you can tell the story the way you want, Jerry Lawler, I suppose.
That's true. Yeah, it's his story to tell, I guess, at this point.
At least in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't know so much about anywhere else, but we're going to go on.
That's right, baby. I was telling a different story up in New York, baby. That's for sure.
That's for sure. For damn sure, Jimmy. We go off to a VTR now of that infamous matchup at the Mid-South Coliseum. Loser leaves town for 1 year. It's Jerry Lawler up against Jimmy Hart in regards to the loser leave town. Now, the matchup is actually the King versus Eddie Gilbert. And they show about 9 minutes of the match here on TV, which is quite a bit of the match, for the television program.
Oh, yeah. Usually the clips were a lot shorter in those days when they would show highlights from the Coliseum the week before. So, yeah, you saw a lot more of this match than you typically did any of the matches. So
I love going into the video here. Lance Russell telling us to pay special attention to a guy around ringside. Refers to him as a guy. Gotta love Lance.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you have Lance down. You definitely have the...
I've watched a lot of Memphis Wrestling in my lifetime.
Absolutely.
So the guy referred to here is Tommy H at this point. I think his name's going to change a little bit here as we come back out of all of this, but we're going to go off now to the closing seconds of that matchup. Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert taking on Jerry the King Lawler. Loser leaves for 1 year.
Lawler goes down. Gilbert falls across him. They count him. Lawler's shoulders are down. 2. He rolls Gilbert up. 2, 3. Got it. Jimmy Hart is gone. 28 minutes and 28 seconds. And one that will not be forgotten. It'll go down in history. Jerry Lawler not only regains the Southern belt, but sends Jimmy Hart packing for 1 year.
So if they haven't beaten it to the ground at this point, Jimmy Hart is gone for at least 1 year, Gene. And of course, Jerry Lawler regains the Southern title, which he technically never lost, if I remember correctly. Of course, the story changed over time. But yeah, Jerry Lawler once again the champion. Jimmy Hart gone from the territory. And Jerry Lawler out here going to talk all about it. He says the big surprise Jimmy Hart promised was Tommy H, a lookalike. Remember when Jimmy promised us in his final promo, one of the things we wouldn't get was a lookalike?
To me, that's always been one of the weirdest things. I mean, all the way back to being 8 years old and watching this on TV was the fact that, like, did anybody's mind go to when this whole idea was pitched, or the match was signed? Did anybody just go, oh, I bet they're going to have a lookalike? Nobody would have even thought of that.
Right.
But Jimmy Hart goes to the great lengths to mention a couple of different times in promos, no lookalikes, baby, no this and that. And then the very next thing that happens is there's a Jimmy Hart lookalike. It would have been better if you'd have never addressed it.
Yeah, I don't think Jimmy, this is just me speculating. I don't think Jimmy knew that was coming. I think Jimmy knew that this guy existed and he knew, some things. And he thought, if I say it in this promo, they're going to have to honor this, so he makes sure to stress it a couple times. It's probably a big surprise, baby. And then, obviously we get the lookalike. So it's kind of odd, but it is what it is. And we're going to have a lot more on that as this show goes on. Jerry Lawler says Eddie Gilbert, he had a clause for an immediate title rematch should he lose the belt, which he did. And so that rematch takes place tomorrow afternoon at the Mid-South Coliseum. And he says, if you thought there was a lot riding on that last week's match, Gene, tomorrow the winner will receive an AWA World Heavyweight title shot against the then AWA champion, Rick Martel. Yes, Buffalo Brett Tatanka. I will not do the job for the King Jerry Lawler or the Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, man. I'm not going to drive down to the Memphis, Tennessee. If I wanted to be paid in peanuts, I'd still be wrestling in the Canadian money. No, now I'm off selling my arrogance. Haha, yes. As the AWA World Heavyweight Champion. I guess you could say I'm your model champion. Eat your heart out, Buffalo Brett Tatanka.
But that's the name of the game in Memphis. They always had to keep, raising the stakes each week, to get everybody back down to that Coliseum. Well, we know last week we told you it was going to be the biggest thing ever, but believe it or not, this is somehow going to be even bigger, folks. You got to come back again.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the world title looming over Jerry Lawler's head, they played that card for years as a big draw with Lawler chasing that title. So it was a great time to bring that to the forefront.
Absolutely. And we're actually going to be honored to see the King in the ring here this week on TV. Jerry Lawler taking on good buddy Jerry Bryant. They have some fun with some arm drags early on from both ends. It's kind of fun to see the Lawler try to throw an arm drag here. But the King having no issues flinging Bryant around in retaliation. Bryant, though, finally has enough and clocking Jerry with a hard right hand to the jaw. Not once, but he does it a second time during a rope break, which only wakes the King up. Lawler comes back with a series of drilling punches down into Bryant's face on the mat and a couple of big beels across the ring. Bryant bumping like a champ for the King, as he should. Bryant then going into his singlet, and he pops Lawler with a foreign object, and down goes the King. Wow, Jerry Bryant getting to use a foreign object gimmick.
Yeah, it was a little more you usually got to see out of Jerry Bryant. It's funny because Jerry Bryant's abilities would fluctuate. Like, there were times that he was booked like just a straight-out jobber.
Yep.
And then just out of the blue, all of a sudden he's getting offense. He might even get a win every now and again. He's somebody important tag team partner. And then the next week, he's right back to job. And it was kind of a unique character in that way. But as we've mentioned before, outside the ring, very good buddy of the King, and he was usually figured in some way whenever Lawler was booking.
Yeah, my understanding, Eddie Gilbert took a liking to him as well, so he's in the right place at the right time between all of this. As we see a series from shots here from Jerry, that's Bryant, until the King going to drop the strap, and he fires up. Bryant slammed in place for that middle rope fist drop, and it connects. But as Lawler begins to make the cover, look out, King! It's an Army service uniform clad Eddie Gilbert out. Very interesting. Hot Stuff attacking and slamming Lawler down into a Jerry Bryant backbreaker. A little double teamwork there. And then here comes Playboy Frazier for the big leg drop. I wrote Brave King taking a leg drop from the Plowboy.
Ooh, you ain't kidding.
My goodness.
It would be hard to lay there not seeing that coming at you. I mean, and how graceful he was anyway.
Oh, yeah. You ain't kidding, man. That is not a batten twin under there. You better take care of him a little better. So right. Lawler eats the Playboy leg drop of doom here post-match. If you couldn't tell, guys, we've already talked about it. Jerry Lawler liked Jerry Bryant. So he goes 5 minutes and 10 seconds here in this squash, and they do a DQ win for the King rather than letting Bryant do the job and then Gilbert attack. So a little protection there, I guess you could say, for Jerry Bryant, who appears to be even joining in on the beatdown post-match here on Jerry Lawler. So, there's one of those instances where you're talking about Bryant goes from job guy to somewhat important.
Yeah. I don't know that he ever really was made at mid-card until maybe later on down the line and some of the Memphis Vice stuff. But he definitely rose above jobber status at times, and I would say this would be one of those times.
Absolutely. So after the beatdown, we get a promo here from Eddie Gilbert, remember, in the Army uniform. He says that Jimmy Hart is gone. I don't think they could beat that dead horse anymore. He confirms that the first family is no more, Gene, so we now have a general here, General Eddie Gilbert, which now explains the Army uniform. And this is Eddie's Army, very similar to the old King's Army from years ago.
Exactly. I mean, it's ironic that this whole angle kicked off with Eddie Gilbert doing a Jerry Lawler, This Is Your Life, because it's kind of like their feuds over the years has been Eddie's one big long Jerry Lawler, This Is Your Life, as the stories go on, right. Because here he's recreating an old Jerry Lawler gimmick, and that would be a theme with these guys. And of course, anybody that's done any studying on, Eddie Gilbert and Memphis over the years, it's pretty well documented that, Eddie Gilbert, besides being a rival in ring and out of Jerry Lawler, was also a big fan of Jerry Lawler and did everything he could to kind of replicate Lawler's career. So he's beginning down that path here, bringing back the King's Army as Eddie's Army, but right. It's fun and it works and it makes sense. And kind of as you mentioned, I'm surprised there wasn't just a constant crawl across the bottom of the screen. Jimmy Hart is gone for a year.
I know, right?
Entire episode.
I'm telling you. So Eddie says that Eddie's Army, their mission, their goal, their cause is to rid the territory of filth. I wrote perfect position for Mike Sharpe.
Okay.
It's a specialty. Absolutely.
Getting rid of dirt like Jerry Lawler, Jimmy Valiant, the Fabulous Ones. The list goes on. And Jimmy Hart, he may be gone, but we now have Tommy Hart, who now wants to be called T.H. Hart for whatever reason. I guess lawsuit. I'm not even really sure what's going on with this, but he says he was a big fan of Jimmy Hart. And he uses the old horse line that Jimmy used. Remember when Jerry Lawler broke his leg? He said, what do you do when a horse, when it breaks its leg? You take it out back and you shoot it in the head. Well, that's what I guess Tommy H, T.H. Hart, and Eddie Gilbert did with Jimmy here. Jimmy gone from the company. Did you know that?
I wish they'd have brought it up before now. I mean, we're several minutes into the program. They're just now letting us know this.
Yeah, who formatted this episode? So T.H. Hart now replacing J.H., Jimmy Hart. But somehow Eddie Gilbert is the leader, so they're not giving full power to this T.H. Hart character for a good reason.
Thank goodness. My gosh. I mean, and the great thing is, he could have been Jimmy Hart's stunt double. I mean, if he stood there and didn't open his mouth, besides being too tall.
He is tall.
He was a spitting image of Jimmy Hart, but Lord, the minute he opened his mouth, I mean, it's funny. You say whether you do the horse with a broken leg, you shoot him. This guy's like if you had shot Jimmy Hart in the head and caused a brain injury, but he survived, and now he's out there cutting promos. Basically,
that's a good analogy.
Oh, thank you. It just popped in my head right now.
That's an excellent analogy of what we have here. So the promo continues on. Is Jerry Bryant going to step into the studio here once again, and he wants to join Eddie's army, and Eddie wants dedication and loyalty in his army, so Bryant has to agree to an army-like head shaving here on TV. And Bryant, he's going to take a seat. They pull up a chair. Jerry Bryant has no problem. He sits down. He's a little reluctant, I suppose, as Eddie prepares to give Bryant a good old-fashioned GI haircut. But as Eddie's clipper is about to touch the head of Bryant, they're interrupted by the Playboy. Playboy Frazier also wants to join Eddie's army, and he's going to replace Bryant in the seat for this head shaving. I mean, couldn't they have just done both of them? Like, why did it only have to be one? I didn't understand why the Playboy had to replace Bryant. But anywho, Frazier does indeed get the head shaving, reminding Eddie to make sure to take it all off the top. God bless Stan Frazier. His comedy is underrated. I got to tell you.
Absolutely. And then the funny thing is I don't remember them really mentioning it, but we're paying off another stipulation here because he was due to have his head shaved due to losing to the Battens and those
which matches. They ignored, right? Which they are ignoring here.
Bring that up
I'm assuming because of the bicycle, and it explains why his head shaved. Because there's no doubt this angle aired in every city because they needed to get over Eddie's army. So they shaved Uncle Elmer bald, and then he, in comical fashion, putting on Eddie Gilbert's army helmet. So that was fun. As we had yet another gimmick to the ever-revolving Stan Frazier gimmick closet. Lieutenant Playboy Frazier, or whatever the hell he's being called here. I'm not really sure where any of this leaves poor Jerry Bryant. He no longer has to cut his hair, but he is still dubbed Private Bryant here. So I guess Stan Frazier saved Jerry a haircut.
I guess so, and I don't know. I mean, maybe they didn't want to make it a across-the-board thing where if you're in Eddie's army, you got to have the haircut, because I'm sure when they came to Iron Mike Sharpe, like, hey, you're going to be affiliated with General Gilbert. He's like, no, I'm not shaving the hair.
Well, you talked about it just a minute ago, the hair cutting. Stan Frazier, like you said, he was supposed to get one anyway. He lost to the Battens across the board in those hair matches. He didn't even do them all yet. But here he is on TV, and they're doing it this way to make sense, and like going back to that bicycle of the 3 weeks here at TV. Since you can't have 6 or 7 head shavings in, 3 weeks time. So this is the way we do it. And they don't even reference the hair match is the reason why he's getting the haircut. So it is what it is. It's Memphis, and it's going to make as much sense as you allow it. As out next is the man himself, Iron Mike Sharpe.
Okay.
To salute General Gilbert. And he tells Mike to do the army proud as he's about to step in the ring. But before he does, Gene, you see, when you're the caliber wrestler of an Iron Mike Sharpe Jr., you don't have to shave your head. Because I wrote, can you imagine how many showers he would have had to take in before he felt clean after having all that hair fall down on his body?
Oh my gosh, Memphis would have suffered a water shortage at the time if that would have happened. It wouldn't have been enough.
A water shortage, I love it. So we go off to the ring. It is Iron Mike Sharpe ready for action. He is now the former Mid-American champion. Remember, guys, Jimmy Valiant now the champion. So Mike Sharpe out here, sans belt, but he does have Eddie's Army in his corner taking on Jim Jamison. Is Sharpe going to attack poor Jamison and fling him right out of the ring and over the announce desk for no reason whatsoever? But the camera, it misses all of it. And then back inside, we get a big clothesline with the old forearm band Doom. Going to get the 1, 2, 3 in a harmless 1 minute and 26 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Mike Sharpe back to victory here on TV.
Yes, back to the way things should be. Good old Iron Mike getting the win. And yeah, throwing him over the announce desk was so random. Like, it really served no purpose. And like you said, they didn't even get it. But
I could see Mike. Hey, how come everybody gets to do that but me? Oh, you can do it, Mike. We don't really give a shit around here. Oh, okay.
I'm gonna pitch you over the desk, okay? Okay.
Okay. No? Okay. So we move on from Mike Sharpe match to a Fabulous Ones music video set to Sharp Dressed Man and ZZ Top. Ironically, there's barely any dressed men in this video, but we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah, fair enough.
We move on to a VTR promo from the Fabulous One himself, Jackie Fargo. He talks the team that he handpicked and put together, Stan Lane and Steve Keirn, the Fabulous Ones. They left the Memphis territory, and they had to get their feel of the world. They had to sow their oats, so to speak, but they're happy to be back here in the good old South, baby, if they ever actually show up here, at least on TV. He says, they don't got a heart like a peanut, Gene. They got a heart like a watermelon, which really doesn't sound all that healthy.
I'm so glad you pointed that out, because I have to say, besides Jimmy Hart's gone for 1 year, that my biggest takeaway from this episode was him pointing out they have a heart like a watermelon. I said the same thing to my wife, who was in the room at the time reading. I was like, I don't think that's a good thing. Like, the heart like a watermelon is really not something to brag about.
Those steroids, pal.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sure Road Warrior Hawk and the Hulkster had hearts like watermelons too.
I bet they did, brother. Jackie Fargo got a reference being on vacation in the Bahamas and being called back home by the Fabulous Ones. I mean, they couldn't have waited for the vacation to end. It's like, Jackie, we need you back here right now for advice. We can't ask you over the phone.
Yeah, like, just give him advice over the phone. What's he got to come back for?
Let's be real. I'm in the fucking Bahamas, guys. I'll talk to you in a week, okay?
Well, everybody knows I can only do these promos on this same couch every single time you see me for the last several years now.
One of my famous striped shirts. Anyway, Fargo states, I love this line. Very Southern of him. I knew something bad was wrong. Knew something bad was wrong.
That's a fair. I take no offense to you saying that was a Southern statement, because that is definitely.
It sounds like something my grandpa would have said. So that's where I was going with that. I knew something was wrong. As he says, as he saw the Fabulous Ones when he arrived back from the Bahamas, two grown men with tears in their eyes, because you can't cry when you're grown men, at least not in Memphis and not in the 1980s. When he arrived back. And they showed him the footage. They showed him the videotape of their fathers being attacked by Troy Graham and the interns. Jackie says he knows the Fab's fathers well. He's played golf with them, so he must know them really well, I suppose, right? That's what happens when you play golf with somebody.
Absolutely. But if I can circle back to one thing there.
Please do.
I love that Jackie Fargo apparently watched those videos of Stan and Steve together, but it wasn't until they had tears in their eyes that he knew something bad was wrong.
That's right. I knew something. I knew something bad was wrong.
You think he'd question their manhood watching those videos more so than the tears they had in their eyes at the airport? But I mean, maybe I'm misreading this.
Yeah, I don't know. But so Jackie Fargo plays golf with the Fab Fathers sometimes. So he's at a loss of words as to what happened. And he says, hey, people, you at home, put yourself in the Fabulous One's position. What would you guys do? Jackie says he knows what he'd do. He doesn't want to take a pistol to him. I love how that's like right where he went, right? I don't want to shoot him. I want to punish Troy and his boys. Torture them. Just getting a little dark and creepy here is Jackie Fargo coming out of vacation early. I guess that's what happens. I wrote, can you imagine the promos from the old days, like what Jackie said in the 1960s here? My God.
Oh my gosh. That would be a fun social experiment, just to take like millennials and have them just sit and watch some of these old promos and things from Memphis in the 80s and just watch them melt down. And although it wouldn't be good, because then they would insist they'd be pulled from the internet and all the tapes burned. No one ever watch or speak of them again.
Right.
Our podcast would be banned.
That would be the end of that. Yeah. The only thing left would be the clean Mike Sharpe promos. But I love that his go-to was, I don't want to take a pistol to him, because that's the obvious answer, right? Like, that's the normal answer. Well, I don't want to shoot him.
He assumes that when he asked that question, every soul in Memphis watching that broadcast was like, I'm going to take a pistol to him. That's what's going to happen. Well, they don't want to take a pistol to him. Hold on now. That's not what they want.
He says, Stan and Steve, they can't be calmed down, but he doesn't want to calm them down. They're coming for the interns. And what they're going for here makes you think of that Jerry Jarrett sign in that office. Gene, personal issues draw money. And it doesn't get more personal than the attack on the Fab Fathers. I'm sorry, guys, I'm laughing at this. But Graham's comments about Dick Kern, obviously, is just about as personal as you can get.
It definitely is. And I don't really know exactly how things worked back then, but I love to consider it if you put it in a more modern context, if a couple of writer/bookers are sitting in a room and, Stan and Steve and Jackie and Troy and the interns are sitting around a table like, well, what could we do to really, heat this thing up and get it personal? And I could talk about your daddy. I could talk about your daddy was in the war. What if I said he was shell shocked? And then Jackie, like, I would want to pistol whip you if you did that. Well, there you go. That's perfect. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, they've been doing it for weeks now. I don't know that Troy tried to get an okay before he did any of this. I'm assuming probably.
You know as well as I do. And I think you hit on it on a recent episode. Truth of the matter is, I'm sure that, Stan and Steve didn't see most of those promos.
Right.
Probably just heard about them, secondhand. Like, do you know what Troy said in that one promo? And they're like, what? He called your daddy your fat shell-shocked daddy. And Steve's like, he said what?
Yeah, he said he was going to make him wish he was back in Vietnam. Oh, man. That was some, and your mammy. Started talking about your mammy.
And he goes to Troy at ringside, like, did you say that? No, baby, I didn't say that.
They're making shit up, baby.
I wouldn't. Your daddy's a great man. Your daddy's a great man. I wouldn't say that.
You understand what I'm saying? I didn't say that.
You understand?
So, we're having all kinds of fun here. We haven't even gotten to the Troy promo yet as we go to the ring for the Southern Tag Team Champions. The interns taking with Troy Graham in their corner, taking on the duo of David Haskins and Ken Raper. As the champion's going to dominate here, a double backdrop, followed by a Don Bass knee lift on Haskins, has him in all sorts of trouble. They pitch him over to the corner to tag in Fresh Meat Raper. Boy, that did not sound good. Raper tossed outside to the floor where Graham lays in a slap. Sky high, backdrop back into the ring, and down goes Raper. And Don Bass going to slingshot Dirty Rhodes in over the top rope from the apron. Slingshot splash. The old bombs away. I wrote, very impressive. Well done here by Dirty Rhodes. Looked like Jim Neidhart for a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that caught me off guard. Like, when I seen him lean back and him grab the ropes, like, he is not fixing it. Okay, he just did. Like, I lost
He didn't just do it. It looked good. They did. It was really nice. Yeah, it was very well done. Gets the 1, 2, 3, the slingshot splash from Dirty Rhodes. Wow. And the intern's going to pick up the win in 2 minutes time.
Looked like old Bam Bam Bigelow almost.
It did indeed, yeah. Moment. Absolutely. As we go off now, after the matchup, Lance Russell standing by with Troy Graham and his interns. They talk about tomorrow, Sunday afternoon. This is fun. No disqualification, no time limit at the Mid-South Coliseum. It's on. The interns, once again, taking on the fabulous ones. As Troy says, we saw Jackie Fargo on that VTR looking 5 years older than water. You're looking 5 years older than water. Says,
that's just such a Troy Graham thing to say.
Really, and I wouldn't even laugh at, it's got to be the delivery. Like, Bobby Heenan has a great delivery to where you might not laugh at some of it, but it's the way Bobby delivers it. And Troy's the same way in his way. Lots of things that he says, just the delivery is amazing. As he says, the varicose veins in Jackie's legs are holding him up. You understand what I'm saying?
It is always very important to Troy that you understand what he's saying. He's going to check in with you and make sure.
That's correct. And I love the way he's straight to the point as he goes to Lance. He says, Now, you got some film to show or something? It's like last week, he said, you bring back some rice. Bring back some rice from Japan. I mean, it's just straight to the point. He comes out here, he's cutting his promo, and he goes, you got a film to show? Doesn't even give Lance time to cue it up. But we do get a quick VTR from last week, Mid-South Coliseum. It was supposed to be the Fabs and the interns, but they never really explain why it turns into, oh yeah, they do, I'm sorry, Steve Keirn versus intern number 1, as we learned that Stan Lane was quote-unquote snowed in. I bet I know which snow that was. As we cut straight to the finish here, intern number 2 attacking Steve Keirn for the disqualification and leading to a intern's 2-on-1 beatdown on Keirn as the masked men pull out some handcuffs here. Gene, looks like Keirn could be in some trouble, but the tag team champions run into one another, and Keirn, he winds up with the cuffs, which was a cool spot here as Keirn then going to handcuff the interns together. But as Steve about to use a chain on him, the damned Terminators attack of all the damn teams. And then it's the Dirty White Boys out to the rescue, running the Terminators off. So thank God for that. As we come back to the studio, we get the promo here. Troy Graham still out here, hard selling the big rematch. Southern Tag Team titles on the line. He says, and this is important, no disqualification. Tomorrow, baby. As the intern pops a wheelie, Troy Graham popping a wheelie in his wheelchair as they roll him off. God bless this gimmick. It belonged on national TV.
Absolutely. It just gets more fun each and every week. But I mean, how else does a manager in a wheelchair show you he's fired up, he means business? Pop a wheelie.
Pop a wheelie.
We're coming in hot.
Now, this next segment, it wasn't meant to be funny, but I had all sorts of fun listening to even typing this up. Is Lance Russell going to talk the wrestling hotline? He says it's back up and running. Apparently it was down for a week or two, Gene. So the mechanical machine has been a little ill as of late, but it's back up and running. Feeling better, Gene.
It reminds me, did you ever see that there was a Sean Oliver interview with Big Van Vader where he was talking to him about the big helmet that he used to bring to the ring?
Okay.
And he asked him, he's like, so how did that work, where it would shoot the smoke out?
Right.
And Vader, serious as art, goes, it had a mechanical mechanism inside of it that made it work. And you see Oliver just nearly just loses it. And he's like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, mechanical mechanism. Like, well, what was the smoke? And he said, it was kind of a liquid. It was a wet liquid mist type thing. And it's like, just tell him you have no idea, dude. Like a mechanical mechanism and a liquid mist. It's like just say, I don't know, man. I'm not the guy that does that. I'm the guy that breaks people's bones and
right. Yeah, it's time. Absolutely, yeah. So you gotta love Lance Russell, though. The mechanical machine. He has no idea what what an answering machine is at this point in 1985. So it's been a little ill, but it's back up now. Call the hotline 685-6969.
And what do we think the lead story on the hotline was that week, Ray?
I'm not really sure, baby. Beans and taters?
For a year.
Beans and taters for a year in New York City. As at this point in the show, they're going to run down tomorrow's Mid-South Coliseum card. We know on the top it's Jerry Lawler and Eddie Gilbert. Winner going to get an AWA World title shot. To be clear, they announced that Randy Savage will be taking on Adrian Street in a return match, which is no disqualification, no time limit. However, and this is fun, Lance Russell does not sell the Intern's Fabulous Ones match as no DQ because it's not. So now Troy Graham pulling the old it's not a no DQ match?
Oh, okay.
No, it's not, Troy. It's a regular tag team match between the Interns and the Fabulous Ones. Just want to straighten that out here.
We jumped the gun, Troy. Settle down. That's why you shouldn't be out there popping wheelies. Get the story straight before you head out there.
So they run down the Coliseum card, and then Lance Russell interrupted once again by General Eddie Gilbert, who plans to get that world title shot against the AWA champion, keeping Jerry Lawler out of the world championship picture, thus forcing the King to retire at the end of 1985. So they're still playing heavily into that. So during this segment, Dave Brown left the studio, but he's back as he announces that the snow and ice will be gone by tomorrow. So come on down to the Coliseum.
Yay!
Finally, past this blizzard of 85 that's seemingly gone on for 2 months.
That's like I said, Jimmy Hart took it up north with him, so bless him.
Amen.
As they say in the South.
So the VTRs just keep rolling here from this past week at the Coliseum. Now we get the final minute of thank God it was only a minute, of the Mid-American Championship match. Iron Mike Sharpe taking on Jimmy Valiant. We see Sharpe laying it in with some arm brace shots, but handsome Jimmy comes battling back and grabs Sharpe by his arm and forces Iron Mike to hit himself over the head with the brace, knocking Sharpe out cold. And then Valiant going to make the cover to capture the Mid-American Championship. And I'm not really sure what happened to Jimmy Valiant's arm brace. Remember, he had that a few weeks ago. That was going to be his counteract to Mike Sharpe, but it seems to have disappeared here. Not sure if he left that in Japan or pawned it for some quote-unquote party goods. But whatever works. We have a new Mid-American champion. Mercy, baby.
He might have made some sort of trade for it, if you will, over there in Japan.
Yeah, maybe on a seedy road somewhere outside of Memphis. As we continue on, following the Mid-South Coliseum matchup, we don't head to the ring. We head back to Lance Russell. He's standing by right now with the man himself, Iron Mike Sharpe.
Wait 1 minute. Did you see that tape? That tape was doctored with. That isn't a legitimate tape. That tape was spiced. It didn't show the real story. Can you imagine a man like Jimmy Valiant being the Mid-American champion? That's a disgrace to professional wrestling. There's no way he could beat a man like me, an athlete like Iron Mike Sharpe. No way. I'll tell you what happened. You want to know the true story? You were there. Do you want to know the true story? I'll tell you the true story. When the referee's back was turned, handsome Jimmy Valiant, the favorite of all the people, the man would never do anything wrong. He took an object, a steel object, out of his trunks and put it in my armband, and then he took this armband and he started knocking me in the head. Sure, I got knocked out temporarily. It could happen to anybody. No man could withstand cold steel on the head. Well, I mean, what do you expect?
That's what we've been saying
But now there's a gigantic conspiracy to ruin my reputation, Iron Mike's reputation. But I'll tell you something, handsome Jimmy Valiant. When I get you in the ring, you're going to pay for this. You're going to pay for everything you've done to me. You've ruined my reputation, and you're not going to get away with it. Nobody pulls that on Iron Mike Sharpe. I'll guarantee you that.
Okay, Iron Mike Sharpe having his word to say about...
Wow, I don't even know where we begin with this, but one thing's for sure, Iron Mike Sharpe is no cream puff.
What do you think, I'm a cream puff or something? I'm going to worry about some stipulation like that?
So last week, it was Troy Graham talking about the videotape being tampered with, but this week, Mike Sharpe takes the cake. It was doctored with, Gene.
Wait 1 minute, did you see that tape? That tape was doctored with.
Doctored with.
And, it really would have been more appropriate for Troy Graham and the interns to claim the tape was doctored with. So, kudos to Mike for picking that up there. I'm not sure that the tape was doctored. He slid some steel into there was a lot happening to poor Mike here. He had so much working against him. There was just no chance. Even though he's not a cream puff. All right, let's get that straight right now.
What do you think, I'm a cream puff or something? I'm going to worry about some stipulation like that?
No, he's not worried about anything. He's Iron Mike Sharpe.
But, there's only so much that even a man of Iron Mike Sharpe's standards can withstand, and he was just overcome by all the evil ways of Jimmy Valiant in this match, and it's pretty sickening, Ray. I'm sad to see the title reign in. It was the most epic Mid-America title reign we had seen in Memphis wrestling history.
At least in 1985. At least up to this point. This point in 1985.
Since Jerry Jarrett had pulled the belt out of the drawer and went, let's use this one again for a while. It's ugly.
That tape was doctored with.
It was doctored with, damn it, Gene. Just take Mike Sharpe's word on it, as he calls Jimmy Valiant a disgrace for the Mid-American Championship. He, as you said, he took a steel object, and what a clever man, Jimmy Valiant. Give him a lot of more credit than he deserves, sliding a steel object into Mike Sharpe's band and then using it against him. How dare he? And then we get another hidden gem. So you got to add this to the Mike Sharpe School of Catchphrases. This is maybe my new favorite.
No man could withstand cold steel on the head.
No man can withstand cold steel on the head.
Maybe yet another there might be a whole series of Iron Mike Sharpe T-shirts here, because what a statement, and it's true. I don't know, Ray, if you have ever encountered cold steel to the head.
I did. I walked right into a forklift once. It did not feel good.
Yeah, and you went down, didn't you?
I sure did.
You would have lost your Mid-America title had it been on the line right there, and so did Mike Sharpe.
So Sharpe stating that Jimmy Valiant ruined his reputation. You see, he's Canadian, so he didn't ruin it. He ruined it.
Right.
But I did write here in my notes at the end of this promo, I wrote, did you ever think walking into this show, not this episode, but just Memphis 85, that we'd accumulate a treasure trove of sound bites from Mike Sharpe of all people? Just give the man a microphone every week and he never disappoints.
Exactly, because before we started watching Memphis 1985, I couldn't have told you 5 words I had ever heard Mike Sharpe speak. I don't know that I ever heard him do anything but grunts in the ring.
Well, I was going to say, I could name a few words. Arr, arr, and then
exactly.
Would have been perfect for Tool Time or something. But
it's the original
yes.
Tim the Tool Man Taylor of
there
wrestling.
You go. Yeah.
Mike Sharpe.
That's right.
And then, of course, the irony of the Tool Man going down to cold steel to the head. It all fits together now. It makes sense.
No man could withstand cold steel on the head.
Oh, man. I can't wait for next week. Hopefully, this continues on, and at least until he leaves the territory, which is just going to be unfortunate. But I'll savor the moment while we can here as the program continues on. Up next, we get a promo from Danny Davis and Ken Wayne, the Nightmares. They state that they have a matchup coming next against the Daydreamers, still going on since like December. So they say if the Daydreamers win this upcoming TV match here today, the Nightmares will never appear on TV again, and the Daydreamers can unmask and remain the CWA no matter who they are. Remember, Constance and Ashley, who may be under these masks, they lost a match many moons ago to the Nightmares, and they had to leave town. Thus, the Daydreamers appeared out of nowhere, and now the Nightmares stating the Daydreamers are indeed Constance and Ashley. Well, they say if the Daydreamers can win today, they can unmask and stay in the territory no matter who they are. I wrote, wait, what if one of them's Jimmy Hart?
Oh, that's a great question. That's I wish somebody would have posed that back then, but holy crap, this is like the feud that never ends.
This
it's
whole
very convoluted, and it's just drug on. It's like they trot it out there when they need to fill some time, but nobody's. I mean, do you think there was one person in the territory or even in that studio that gave 1 ounce of a shit at this point what happened in this feud? Or if those guys was or wasn't Constance and Ashley. Like, this had drug on and went nowhere, and like no one was invested in this. No,
and they treated it that way. I mean, these guys weren't even on TV for the better part of the last month and a half. And like you said, they just trot them out here when it's convenient, when they need time to fill, which is unfortunate because the story was there, and these guys, Constance and Ashley, are pretty good sized guys. They could have probably gotten over with the right proper push, but you don't want to get too big. Not saying they would ever have been Jerry Lawler popular or anything like that, but you never know what, could have came of this, given their size and whatnot. But, so that's not even all the stipulations. That's just one side. That's if the Daydreamers win. Apparently, if the Nightmares win, the Daydreamers, they must unmask and leave town no matter who they are. So I wrote, boy, Gene, I don't know about you, but all of this loser leave shit is just becoming too convoluted in all of the storylines. It's starting to hurt my head just thinking about all of this stuff, but the entire territory is just one giant stipulation right now, it feels like.
Absolutely. No territory in wrestling history did more loser leave towns and dog piled on just more convoluted stipulations than Memphis. Because in Memphis, Memphis is the kind of place I wouldn't have been surprised if they hadn't had it in. And if the Nightmares win, the Daydreamers have to unmask and they have to shave their head and then they have to leave town. And the Nightmares win their car at a night with their wives. Like they would just pile on all this crap to where by the end you couldn't even keep up with. I love the tag matches. We'll eventually get to some of these kinds of like tags and 6-man tags where each person involved in the match has a different stipulation. If this guy gets pinned, he has to eat dog food. But if his partner gets pinned, he gets his head shaved. But if they both get pinned, then the manager gets ran over in the parking lot with a dump truck, and it's like, God damn, who can keep all this straight? Good grief.
Well, what's odd here is this feud's been going on for a while. There was no build-up, no announcement of this match, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, out of the blue, we learned that, this match is happening here today on the show, and now there's like 87 stipulations attached to it just because they went to Eddie Marlin and say, hey, Eddie, can we do all this? And Eddie's like, yeah, whatever. So that's pretty much where we're at. You forgot
it was going on, and now we're blowing it off with 12 stipulations in one match, and before this episode started, you forgot it was even happening. And as we pointed out many times, this angle had potential, but they stepped on it right out of the gate the day they introduced the concept of who the Daydreamers were. That very first promo the Nightmares did.
Before we saw them.
Spoiled the whole thing. Before you ever saw them, you already knew where this was going. And it's like, all right. And they never recovered from that. Like, they just continued to step on it all the way. But the good news is, apparently it's ending. So, hey. Got that going for us.
I guess so. From the beginning, this has been a little lopsided. I get what they wanted to do, Nightmares, Daydreamers, I get it. And, if you want to stick somebody in there and teach you how to work and have good matches, obviously the Nightmares are a good choice. But at the same time, the Nightmares are one of the smallest combined tag teams of all time. And Constance and Ashley, they actually have some size, at least for the Memphis territory. I'm not really sure how tall they are, but they come off very tall here in Memphis anyway. So that's why I noticed this right out of the gate. Ken Wayne trying for a backdrop, and I had to LOL at this. Go watch this match, guys. I believe it's Constance, maybe it's Ashley. They hit the ropes. Ken Wayne's looking for a backdrop, and they literally just step over top of him rather than doing the old leapfrog. And they don't do it like to make it obvious. It was just easy to just step over top of him to, hit the rope. Kind of do, instead of leapfrog, you just walk over top of the guy. He's that much shorter than you. It's like Andre stepping over the top rope. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea of the size difference here between the two teams right away. As the promo for the Nightmare is so confusing, Eddie Marlin has to come out during the matchup to once again explain all of the stipulations that were added to this match. As it's just ridiculous. When you have to explain the rules twice, probably not the best idea of booking, but the Nightmare is going to take over the action here. Davis and Wayne taking turns choking one of the masked foes out with a piece of athletic tape. Then we get a double backdrop on Daydreamer, we'll call him number 1, as Davis then with an inside cradle getting himself 2, a sunset flip, gets another 2 count by Davis, then Ken Wayne in with a reverse rolling cradle, which also gets 2, and I'm like, wait a minute, these are the heels, why are they doing all the babyface comeback hope spots here?
Exactly. It was very ass backwards.
So Ken Wayne with that reverse rolling cradle going to get 1, 2, Daydreamer number 1 kicking Wayne out of the cover. Wayne goes face first into the corner buckle, stumbles backwards into a schoolboy by Daydreamer number 1, and it gets the 1, 2, 3. I wrote, well, that was kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was. It just, there was nothing good about this. Like, no. I struggle. Like, I don't want to just dump on things, but this was just so
bad.
Botched,
They've been working together for at least 3 months.
Every bit of the execution on this, from the promo through the match itself, was just not well executed or thought out at all.
You're telling me in 3 months' time, these guys didn't have one spot down that they, let's do the one we did. Yeah, let's do that one. No, it was really weird. We got Daydreamer number 1. Apparently he didn't even need number 2. Didn't even bother to tag him in. Did the job all by himself. Match goes a whopping 4 minutes. What a blow off.
Yeah, the only thing that could have made this worse is if the Daydreamers would have unmasked, revealed the Terminators, although that would have been a little bit fun and head-scratching, but...
Oh, man. What if they were like Terminator clones, and then we got Terminators versus Terminators 2?
Oh, God help us. The world would have imploded. You knew it wasn't the Terminators because they didn't do the double atomic hanger, so that was
That's right. So basically, Daydreamer number 2 just gets to stand on the apron for the duration of this matchup. Now, he does enter the ring when Daydreamer number 1 goes for the cover. He's going to fend off Danny Davis. But the problem is, Danny Davis, he cares so much about this match, he cares so much about missing future TV shows that he just stands on the apron and watches it happen. So Danny Davis, no fool. Wait a minute. If we lose, we don't have to wrestle on TV for free anymore? All right, we'll do the job this morning. As the Daydreamer's going to get the win and immediately unmasked to reveal, well, holy shit. It was indeed Steve Constance and Tim Ashley the entire time. And they whipped the masks into the ring, returning them back to the Nightmares from which they originally came. As the cameras, they managed to completely miss the Daydreamers' faces throughout the entire celebration. I wrote, way to be.
I mean, I guess, in the name of kayfabe and not smartening people up, they didn't tell, these guys where to get the shots on the camera. But, I mean, you think at least from the control room as it's happening, somebody can be like, hey, man, get a shot of that. So we've been building this for weeks on who are these guys. And you're still not really sure who they are because you didn't technically see it. You just know that Lance and Dave called it.
If I had an inkling of what professional, and some of these camera guys have probably been around a while, but if I had been in this for 2 weeks and I saw guys take their masks off, I think I would have known, hey, this is probably, I should probably get a shot of what these guys look like without the masks. But no, they don't bother to do that here. So we have to take Lance Russell's word that it was indeed Ashley and Constance.
I'm sorry. We thought you didn't want them guys. We thought you didn't want them to know who those guys were with the mask on. That's why they wore masks. We're sorry. We was trying to help.
For crying out loud. What in the Sam Hill? Who's out here working the cameras?
Is that the Terminators running the cameras? Because they suck.
That's a good point. It very well may have been their brother or something along those lines. As the show going to continue on. Now things get a little fun here. As we get a VTR, once again, back to the Mid-South Coliseum this last week, we see the finish of a matchup involving exotic Adrian Street taking on the Macho Man Randy Savage. As we see Adrian Street whip a super bloody Savage into the ropes, and Macho Man getting his neck caught, hung in the ropes, Don Morocco style, and Street just relentlessly beating on that vulnerable Macho Man stuck in the ropes. And then we see the Batten twins out trying to make the save, but they get booted out for their troubles as Macho just pouring blood down his face, getting choked out by the ropes, and Adrian Street, like a pit bull, just relentlessly pounding away. Very violent scene here, forcing Eddie Marlin to come out. He gets on the house mic, and he threatens to suspend Adrian Street if he throws another punch. I wrote, again with the suspension shit, but that aside, I wrote, I'm sorry to the interns and Fabs, but man, this was the most aggressive stuff I've seen in weeks here in the territory, and these guys aren't even on TV.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad and amazing part. But yeah, I mean, here we got exotic Adrian looking like the single most dangerous man in the territory right here, looking like this is probably the most vulnerable you would see Randy Savage look until he had a cobra latched onto his arm, 8 years later or whatever. Right. Like it was pretty alarming to see because, like I said, even a little bit of baby face you had seen of Savage at this point, you really never saw him in a situation like this where he's just helpless and getting just the living crap beat out of him.
Savage has basically been the stunt double for Jerry Lawler in the towns he doesn't want to make it. It's been Macho versus Eddie Gilbert. We haven't seen Macho Man on TV once in the studio this year. Adrian Street, it's been teaming with Uncle Elmer a couple months ago. So we really haven't seen either one of them in the studio. They haven't done a whole lot with either one of them outside of just working the house shows. And then they're told to go out there and get over Thun. And these guys say, you know what? They're giving us an opportunity. Finally, we're going to go out there and steal the show. And they did for me.
Absolutely. And if I'm a casual fan that's just kind of dipping in and out on the TV show and really hasn't made my way down to the Coliseum, and I've seen, Adrian out here teaming with, Uncle Elmer, and I've seen him on TV the one morning where Dave and them couldn't shut up about how good the paint looked on his face, how well he replicated the Union Jack flag.
Right.
Then suddenly seeing this guy nearly committing murder on the Macho Man, I would be completely just taken aback. Like, holy cow, I didn't know this dude had it in him. Like,
no, yeah,
this is the wildest guy on Memphis TV.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this little segment of the match. But think about it, you go back now and you start thinking about, we had Steve Keirn in the intern match. We had this match. We had Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler, that 30-minute match where Jimmy Hart leaves town. So they had a really stacked card at the Coliseum last time around. So I'm looking forward to some of the rematches here. And this is going to set up a return match, as we talked about, tomorrow at the Coliseum. No disqualification, which makes sense because Adrian Street disqualified here in this matchup with the Macho Man. But I wrote, could you imagine the studio brawls and the promos we could have been having during this period between these two?
And we needed them, quite frankly. I mean, like you say, we had a strong card last week, but man, the TV and the action in the studio has been lackluster, to say the least. When the highlight of everything we've seen so far in 2 months of watching Memphis is Jimmy Hart dumping a bag of flour on Lance Russell's head.
Yeah.
It's been definitely lackluster, to say the least.
Oh, no. Dear Lord, it appears the Terminators are also part of Eddie's army, so apparently he's just taking everybody. They're out here with Hot Stuff and Mr. T.H. Hart. Boy, I hope they're on the front line, the Terminators, the first to go into battle. as they apparently cut promos like they wrestle, Gene, as they have a cute little line here. They're going into tomorrow, taking on the Dirty White Boys in yet another loser leaves town matchup. Go figure. As the Terminators say, they're going to be taking down the Dirty White Boys tomorrow day.
Okay.
I can't make this shit up.
It sounds like Charlie from Sunny in Philly here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, Dirty White Boys, you're gone. Tomorrow day.
Tomorrow day.
Tomorrow day. Unbelievable.
These guys, like, they were awful from the word go, but watching their matches, and if God help you folks, if you hate yourself and you feel you need to punish yourself, just watch all the Terminator matches that are available up to now. They're regressing. They're getting worse. How's that possible? Yeah,
they're working 7 days a week, if you want to call it that. And it's just every week they've learned less. They bump. Oh man, we'll get into it in this. Oh my God, we go to our final match of the TV program. I can't believe they put this on. Talk about save the best for last. Not happening here. To the expiration of time, the Terminator is going to take on Brad and Mark Batten, the poor Batten twins. As the Terminator is going to dominate the action here, we wind up with a 4-way melee as the Terminators with double whips off the ropes. But the one, he does it from the wrong side. The wrong arm, fucking the entire spot up. The poor Batten.
I've never even seen such. I've never even seen somebody screw something up so bad. I don't even know how you. Yeah, that to me was one of the biggest. I mean, seeing hundreds of episodes of Botchamania, I've never seen something quite that just absurd.
Yeah, Matthew, you got to add this to the list here as the poor Batten twin that gets whipped off the rope by, we'll call this Crow because I believe that's which one it is, but he whips the Batten from the wrong side. He whips him right into the ropes to where Batten can't even hit the ropes properly. He goes chest first into the ropes, let's put it that way. But he's somehow, because he's a solid worker, he manages to recover here. He turns around and comes running back as the Battens with stereo slide under the leg spots on the Terminators. And that's when I wrote, what the fuck? So the same Terminator that incorrectly whipped the Batten off the rope then screws up even further, and I've never seen this in the history of everything I've ever watched. As the Batten tries to slide under his legs, I don't think he knows what the fuck is going on, and the Terminator reaches down and grabs hold of the Batten to prevent him from sliding, as the other one slides through properly. And it was the most amazing thing I ever saw. Imagine you book a spot where you're going to slide between the guy's leg, and the guy just stops you mid-slide, not because he's supposed to, and just holds you there. He doesn't even try to fight you. He just holds you there, pins you down. Very, very awkward shit.
In 2024, watching this match from 1985, I actually got mad and was just like, oh my God, like, how can you be this inept? Like, how are you on television? Like, how have they seen you wrestle more than once and they're putting you on TV? I mean, I have to think if this match wasn't live, there's no way this would have made air. Surely this didn't get replayed in the syndicated stuff or the other towns.
God, I hope not.
It's one of the worst things I've ever seen, not only on Memphis Wrestling, but just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So you figure the spot was supposed to be a double whip off, a double slide under, and the Battens were probably going to do a drop kick. I don't really know. So the one goes through normal, and the other one, this guy stops him and then just sits down on him. He's just sitting on him. He's just sitting on him. And I wrote, what in the actual fuck? And it's funny you said that because I said, now this happened in 1985, and as I was watching this, I wrote right here in my notes, you can read it, I'm getting mad for the Battens here in 2024. After this debacle, you come back through that studio curtain. If I'm booking, you're fucking fired right now. I wrote, this is complete horse shit. Inexcusable. That's how angry I was as I was watching this.
And I swear I didn't read that when I said what I just said. No. I just remember the day I watched it, just when the show ended, is one of the first times that I just turned the TV off and just threw the remote down and just went, fuck. Like, geez, like how did those guys have more than one TV match? Like, why? I mean, they love dealing out these loser leave town matches. Those guys should have came in, had one match, and just never been seen again. Or at the very least, the first show they went to, loser leave town, let's get them the hell out. Like,
in all of my years and all of the matches I've ever seen, if I wasn't wrapped up in a storyline, maybe I got mad at some point. Oh, so and so shouldn't have went over. This is probably the only time in my entire life that I actually just got pissed off based on the shittiness of the wrestlers involved and what they were doing in the ring.
It wasn't heat, it was disgust.
Yeah, absolutely. So that happened. That match happened. We're not even done with it yet. Lance Russell announcing the time is just about up. And I have never wanted it to run out faster than in this match. What proceeds to happen, though, I can't explain with words other than sheer embarrassment of the quote-unquote moves attempted thereafter by the Terminators here in this match. Yes, it continues to get worse, guys. Collectively, the Terminators are awful. But one of them, and I think it's Crow, because he didn't last very long. He goes to prison, believe it or not. He's a whole nother level of ass.
He is. I hope he went to prison for crimes against professional wrestling, and is still there.
If they hung him for being a good wrestler, they hung an innocent man.
Oh yeah. Now, if he went to jail for being a good wrestler, then he was definitely an innocent man. There couldn't have been any footage to support that that statement at all. Dear God.
They finally ring the bell, thank God, though not soon enough. And as I realized the match only goes a mere 2 minutes and 26 seconds, all of this happened in less than 2.5 minutes. How can you be that bad?
I mean, even though it's hard for me to even picture Grandpa Lance, everybody's favorite uncle, however you picture him, cussing. But I have to assume that on that break that Lance comes through the curtain.
What
the fuck, Jerry?
What the fuck is this shit? I told you I was walking. I played the storyline with Jimmy Hart, but I'm leaving if these motherfucking son of a bitches stick around. That was an atrocity to professional wrestling. Fuck this. Where's my cigarette?
Me and Dave could put on a better match than that bullshit. What the fuck?
Now, we're going to get a lot of people going, oh, so-and-so. They're going to name a bunch of random indie crap over the years that, untrained guys and things of that nature. Yeah, Billy Bob from down the road and whatnot. But from a territory standpoint, would you say this is the worst team ever?
I can't think of one. I rack my brain to think, because, indie shit, that's a whole nother can of worms. That's completely different. But as far as territories that were putting on television shows at a time when you did not want the business exposed and you wanted to sell tickets, and the TV shows, is what sold the tickets, and that's what the business hinged on. So you didn't want people that were garbage on TV. I cannot think of a worse, even like all the way to the Herb Abrams UWF days. I can't think of anybody worse than this.
Yeah, that covers a lot of ground and a lot of stuff I've watched. I'd rather watch Ken the Box, go back to some Japanese crazy nonsense from back in the day, wrestle crap and whatnot. But holy cow, man, these guys, and the match ends, but the fight continues, sadly. Post-match, the Terminators continue to beat down the Battens all the way into the break. I wrote, dear God, I've never been happier to see a commercial break in my entire life. The problem is, Gene, we return 2 minutes later, and the Terminators are still stomping and slamming the poor Batten twins. I was like, I've never seen such nonsense. And honestly, if you watch this is stomping and the slamming, I wrote, it looks like a bunch of untrained kids playing around before or after an indie event. When they get to go in the ring, jump in the ring, and horse around. That's what this looked like as the show goes off the air. The last 3 words I wrote here, just an embarrassment.
Dude, after weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of a handicap feud against Playboy Frazier and now matches against the Terminators, they must have banged Jerry Jarrett's wife or some shit.
Double team.
They must have done something absolutely horrible to deserve this. I can't imagine what it was, but it had to be bad.
Oh, and they're longing. I'll teach them to ask to get out of this Playboy Frazier feud. Ask and you shall receive. Oh man, this was, that is not what you want your program to look like going off the air. And like you said, I hope that was edited out. They plugged in a separate, like, Lance, we need you to do a second take to close out the show because we're not putting this on for the syndicated of it,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We'll plug in a 5-year-old match of somebody that ain't even here anymore. Something like we'll just do a medley of Troy Graham promos or something. But good God.
Whew, well, that'll wrap up TV, guys. And on the other side of this, we'll be back in just a moment with the Jerry Lawler Show. guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Rasslin podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Rasslin. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Rasslin Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Rasslin, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show, covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series, covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials. Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify, listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. All right, guys, back from that brief break as we move on now, Gene, to the Jerry Lawler Show, February 17th. The King back from Japan, and he's going to use Tiger Mask to put over the Memphis Wrestling territory this week because, you know, you're going to see stuff like this on Saturday mornings.
It's crazy as far as our show goes, but actually, even then, if you were a wrestling fan in Memphis, you watch the Saturday morning wrestling, then the next morning you're watching this. So at that time, you know, tapes and stuff wasn't real prevalent. So
sure,
the last bit of wrestling these poor people in Memphis saw was that Terminator match with the Batten twins, and now we're picking up the next day with Tiger Mask. Boy, you talking about a major palate cleanser here.
Bitten if it picking up, baby, is we got Tiger Mask number 2. This is Misawa, guys, under the mask now, working for the All Japan territory, taking on Kuniaki Kobayashi, who by all accounts was equally as good. Maybe he wasn't the Tiger Mask, you know, that level of offense, but Kobayashi was an awesome junior heavyweight, one of the top of all time So this is actually a very top-level match we're getting here on Memphis TV. Is Lawler going to narrate a little? He calls this match Tiger Mask versus this guy that's no slouch. So Lawler didn't even bother to learn Kobayashi's name here, but why would he?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, you think if you're going to take the time to run this tape, you can be like, hey, figure out that guy's name and write it down for me and sound it out so I can say it and not sound like a goof. But, it's his show, so.
Yeah, it is. I'm surprised he didn't give him a made-up name. That would have been more fun here. Misawa going to hit the ring here, drop kicks Kobayashi straight to the floor and does a suicide dive that sees Tiger Mask. He basically comes down like a lawn dart on the outside. So that definitely wakes you up Sunday morning. And then Lawler states that much like the British Bulldogs from last week, Lawler claiming that Eddie Marlin going to see about bringing Tiger Mask to the CWA. I wrote, what do you think a Memphis fan would make of Tiger Mask?
You could have had some fun watching Tiger Mask wrestle one of the Nightmares or something, but
they would have pulled it off.
After they've just sat through, they could have had a really good match, but I mean, having just sat through whatever match they would have sat through in the early card of Memphis and then cut to Tiger Mask, that would have been quite the culture shock for him. But
knowing Jerry Lawler, you have to do a Japanese match, so we probably would have got Tiger Mask versus Tojo Yamamoto. Boy, would that have been interesting. Well, we're going to continue on our Japanese theme here this week on the TV program. Jerry Lawler's got some fan mail all the way from Japan. He brought it back with him. So Lawler asking everybody in Memphis to send their postcards to this fan who's apparently longing for some pen pals. And he leaves this fan's home address right here on the Memphis TV screen and proceeds to read this very long letter filleting the king. To sum it up, he loves Jerry Lawler. I wrote, do you think if the letter had been about Jimmy Valiant that Lawler would have spent all that time reading the entire page?
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not. Good grief. Yeah, how does one in Japan even come about anyway?
I have no idea. So Lawler basically wanting to prove that he's an international superstar. Woo, mercy, FM 100.
Means music, son, even in Japan.
As we continue on, out next is Bruce Hopkins, and apparently his children are with him. At least that's what his wife told him. He's promoting a boys club banquet where you can meet Terry Bradshaw. I don't know what Bradshaw from Pittsburgh has to do with Memphis, Tennessee, and Jerry Lawler's Cleveland Browns, for that matter. So we'll continue on with the program. Jerry going to make sure everyone knows that he defeated Eddie Gilbert. We see, once again, another highlights of Lawler over Eddie. Hot stuff last week. Jimmy Hart gone for the next year. Rematch between the two for the Southern Championship later today at 3 p.m. Lawler now the Southern Champion. We'll see if Gilbert can regain as we close out this episode of the Lawler Show. It's Steve Mott of the USFL Showboats. He's along with some child by the name of Griffin Mayo, who is apparently part of the Little Pepper Club. What a name. It's a football program for kids ages 7 to 15, the Little Pepper Club, where you receive a in-zone ticket and quote-unquote gifts. It doesn't really specify what they are, but you get an in-zone ticket, the shittiest seats in the house, and gifts along with that. All you got to do is join the Little Pepper Club, and the winner of the upcoming Pom Pom contest gets a couple cases of Coca-Cola. How about that?
Hey now. All right.
What a club. A couple cases of Coke.
Wonder if that's from Lawler's personal collection. I mean, we know what a fan of Coca-Cola is. Half his house is decorated in Coca-Cola memorabilia. So
Jerry
that was a big gift for the king. He thought that was a big deal.
Hey, what do you say we give the winnings to that kid over in Japan, and then Lawler just keeps the Coke for himself? Personally, I'd stick with the gift card to TGI Fridays, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think the Dirty White Boys came out better than the members of the Little Pepper Club.
I wonder if the Little Pepper Club continued on with the NFL. We'll have to look into that, guys, the Tennessee Titans. As we continue on, February the 17th, also a little later in the day, 3 p.m. start time at the Mid-South Coliseum. We're going to see the card here unfolds like this. Tojo Yamamoto over Private Jerry Bryant. 8-man tag team action. Well, it was the Daydreamers, but now it's Constance and Ashley teaming with the Batten Twins over the Nightmares, Joe Lightfoot, and Mr. Wrestling. We're going to have a lot more fun with Mr. Wrestling next week, so we won't reveal his identity. I think I did last week already, but we won't talk about it this week because there's more fun to come on television, I do believe.
Yeah, we don't need you to reveal their identity. Other people will do that.
We'll let them do it for us. Also on the card, mixed tag team action here. The Playboy, or whatever he is now, Frazier, teaming with Diane Van Hoffman, going over the team of Leaping Lanny Poffo and Candy Devine. Then from there, no disqualification, no time limit. I hope we get some of the highlights of this in the future episodes of TV. It's Adrian Street scoring the pin over the Macho Man Randy Savage. So it looks like that feud will continue on for now, or maybe not. It's Memphis, so we'll have to wait and see. Then from there, Mid-American Champion, Handsome Jimmy Valiant over Iron Mike Sharpe by disqualification. I wrote, I feel like this story is going backwards now.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. We'll just keep going.
For argument's sake, okay, Mike Sharpe gets his rematch because he lost the belt. I guess I won't argue that, but did we really need to do the DQ and start from scratch? No thanks. Because we continue on. As promised, loser leaves town. The Terminators. The Terminators defeat the Dirty White Boys. Bet you didn't see that coming. I wrote, you've got to be shitting me, Gene. This was a perfect out for Jerry Jarrett to get rid of the Terminators. Hey, if the White Boys are really leaving the town, make it a double disqualification. Get rid of both fucking teams, whatever. But yeah, the Terminators remain.
Boy, don't you know that the heads were hanging low for Tony Anthony and Lynn Denton, knowing they were having to go out and do the job for these two clowns. And I'm sure they were glad to leave town if it meant they didn't have to wrestle them anymore. But holy.
Do you think Lynn and Tony gave notice when they were told they were going to be paired with the Terminator? We ain't doing that. We'll just head on down the road.
I'm sure they did after the first match they had to have with them. Like, how much more of this is going to be? Oh, a few more weeks. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and put our notice in now. We'll head back to Central States or some shit.
I was going to say, I wonder if the Batten twins, that's when they go to Central States, is after they get this slobber knocker on TV. Actually, that match was more of a bowling shoe ugly match, to quote JR. But we go on. We got a couple of main event matches here. Of course, coming up first, winner gets an AWA World Heavyweight title shot against Rick Martel. At least that's the story right now, is we're going to see the Southern Heavyweight Champion, Jerry Lawler, once again go over on Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. Has Gilbert defeated Lawler fair and square, or in any way, shape, or form? I know he won the belt after the fact that one time, but has he ever actually defeated the King one time in this entire feud?
No, he has not. It has been
going on since December.
Lopsided.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, there we go. Champion Jerry Lawler over Eddie Gilbert. So Lawler promised an AWA World Heavyweight title shot. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out in the weeks to come. And we close out the Mid-South Coliseum card. This was not a no DQ match, by the way, guys.
Oh, okay.
Contrary to what Troy Graham told us on TV. And it is indeed Stan Lane and Steve Kern, the fabulous ones, defeating the Southern Tag Team Champion interns. So we get a title change here. So the interns were champions. The belts were held up after the White Boys match. We got that whole convoluted tournament where the interns simply won the belts back. And now finally they lose them to the Fabs.
All right, so surely the Fabs will come to TV and be live in the studio with the titles on Saturday morning. Let's all stay tuned, folks.
Right. We'll have to wait and see how that what goes down with that in the weeks to come. As we continue on, good fun Mid-South Coliseum card there, but it takes place once again on a Sunday. So they're off to Jonesboro, Arkansas on Monday, February the 18th. Going to see the fabulous ones return to Jonesboro for the first time in a long time. Also on the card, Jerry Lawler, Jimmy Valiant. 6 matches announced, 3 of them championship bouts. Tickets available at Ford Meacham's Jewelry. No results there, guys. Can't help you there. Just want to give you all the information I did have. As we continue on, got some fun promos coming up here, Gene. We're going to have some fun with these. As February 19th, Tuesday, in Louisville, Kentucky, at the Louisville Gardens, 7 matches on the card, including the fabulous ones taking on the interns, Jerry Lawler and Eddie Gilbert, Mike Sharpe against Lanny Poffo, Lumberjack match featuring the Macho Man Randy Savage against the exotic Adrian Street. And right now we go off to a promo from the man himself. Here he is one more time, guys. So nice. We're going to do it twice. Here he is, Iron Mike Sharpe.
Find out about is the Mid-America title match. Hey, how about Lanny Poffo going to be challenged?
Who's Lanny Poffo? Let's talk about me. I'm the champion. I'm the one that deserves all the recognition and the credit. You know who I am? I'm Canada's greatest athlete. I'm also the Mid-American champion. You know what that is? That covers all Mid-America. That's a big place, right?
Big place.
Well, I'm a big man, and it's going to take more than Lanny Poffo to stand a chance with me. I'll guarantee you that.
Tuesday night, Louisville Gardens.
Who's Lanny Poffo? What a great question to kick things off as he steps in the ring. Still the Mid-American champion here in Louisville anyway.
Yep. We gotta keep it straight. He's still the champion in Louisville, and he's a big man who's champion of a big place.
That's right.
So,
covers all of Mid-America. That's a big area. So Iron
right.
Mike Sharpe, ladies and gentlemen.
No man could withstand cold steel on the head.
No man.
So true.
Absolutely.
So true.
Absolutely. So we go. This might be the first time we have a soundbite here featuring the Macho Man Randy Savage getting ready for his lumberjack match against the exotic Adrian Street.
All right, back to Channel 3's Championship Wrestling in the ring here in just a moment. Boy, I'm looking at the card. 7 matches, including that Lawler-Gilbert match. It's going to be something else. One of them is going to be a return grudge match, a lumberjack one with the guys around the ring, Randy Savage, Adrian Street. They'll be throwing somebody back in the ring.
Throwing somebody back in the ring, right? Okay, good. Cherishing this moment. Everybody get on the phone and call somebody. Yeah, got a message for Adrian Street. I can squeeze your head, make it flatter than a dime, stick you in a telephone and call a friend of mine. You understand that? That didn't happen, did it? No, nobody knows, Lance Russell. No one knows.
We're going to be finding out come Tuesday night.
Again, I ask you, why is he not on TV? I don't even know some of the things he said there, but if you go watch this promo, which is on my YouTube, he talks about the promo. That didn't happen, did it? No, who knows? With the Macho Man Randy Savage.
That didn't happen, did it? No, nobody knows, Lance Russell. No one knows.
We're going to be finding out come Tuesday night.
I thought I had heard almost every savageism there is, but squeezing your head until it's flatter than a dime and put
Not
it.
a friend of mine,
Call a friend of mine.
Yeah,
Wow.
I never
That's a
heard
new
any
one.
of that. Mm-hmm.
Call somebody, yeah. Got a message for Adrian Street. I can squeeze your head, make it flatter than a dime, stick you in a telephone and call a friend of mine.
He's got so many, I guess he just, forgot that one over time. But yeah, that was a first for me as well. So that was fun.
Good stuff.
Absolutely,
Good
absolutely.
stuff. I like it.
Well, we continue on. Oh, you can only top the Macho Man with the likes of Troy Graham.
Okay, Louisville. By golly, I'll tell you what, right down there at the Gardens Tuesday night is going to be something else. I'll give you the whole card a little bit later on, but in addition to the big Lawler-Gilbert match that'll be coming up, I got to tell you, you got a Southern Tag Team title match with the fabulous one, Stan and Steve, after the interns who really messed his father up. You know his dad is walking with a walking
Well, that's
stick.
good, baby. That's good. Kern's going to be walking with a walking stick when we finish with him in Louisville, baby. It's going to be a graveyard digging in a coffin buying a long time. We've been in a family crime possession. Is 9/10 of the law. We got the belts. We whooped them from one end of that Louisville Gardens to the other end of the Louisville Gardens, baby. What I understand is that's a bald-faced lie. I understand that Laney Kern is going to have his old daddy sitting out in the audience waiting on me to jump me from behind. Well, that's just fine. You big fat shell shock daddy of yours, you need to be in a mental institution, baby. We got the belt. You come on to Louisville Gardens because we're going to drop something on you that A-bomb won't take off. Rock and roll.
Oh man, he couldn't just call it a cane. He's walking with a walking stick.
Now he needs to be in a mental institution. He's adding more ailments to him as we go along.
You big fat shell shock daddy of yours, you need to be in a mental institution, baby.
I know I said earlier in the show that Sharpe's our favorite, and I mean it's not untrue, but
right.
Boy, it may be 1A and 1B there.
Yeah, Troy's definitely giving him a run for his money.
He just keeps bringing it every week. He keeps upping the stakes on these promos against Steve Kern's fat shell shock.
Your big fat shell shock daddy belongs in a mental institution.
I've never heard of anything that Avon wouldn't take on.
That's what I wrote. He says he's going to drop something on him that Avon won't take off. Of course, he means Ajax here, but it is what it is. It's Troy Graham. He says it with the definition in his voice that you just buy it, I guess.
Because we're going to drop something on you that A-bomb won't take off.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have time to question him because he's just bam, 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 and he's out of there.
Right.
Good stuff.
Oh, put him on a walking stick. I love it. It's like when my great grandma used to tell me to clean up my play pretties. That's it's toys for you Yankees out there. As we continue on, one more promo. Grandmammy, grandmammy. As we continue on, one more promo here for the Louisville Gardens. We're going to tie things up. We heard from Troy Graham, one side of the feud. Now we're going to hear from the other side. Here is Steve Kern.
Tell you something else. Southern tag titles are up. The Fab's going against the interns, and Troy was out here making big brags about what they had done to your father.
Well, that Troy Graham talks real big sitting in that wheelchair, knowing nobody's going to reach down and slap him upside the head. He gets two big fat men. He tells them what to do, tells them how to act, tell them how to dress, tell them when to do something and when not to do something. Well, nobody tells us what to do and what not to do, but we do ask Jackie Fargo when we want advice. And let me tell you something. We've been talking to Jackie Fargo this week, and we've got a lot of advice. Troy Graham, you fire them interns up, because all the snow coming down and all that ice and rain coming down right now hasn't cooled us off a bit. We're here for business. We came to get those titles, but that's far beyond in our minds right now. Revenge is what we've got in our hearts, and Troy Graham, your interns are going to get a taste of it.
That's coming up Tuesday night, Louisville.
So, apparently Steve Kern blaming Troy Graham, saying that you took two big fat men and you tell them how to dress and you tell them what to do. But nobody does that to the Fabulous Ones, well, except for Jackie Fargo, who told them how to dress and told them what to do.
Well, they did it in reverse. The fat man's telling them what to do, and so I guess somebody telling the fat man what to do. But
there you go. Well, he doesn't tell us what to do. We go there for advice, says Steve Kern. So it's a little different.
But he does have to get on a plane and leave the Bahamas, because we can't just take advice over the phone. We need him to draw us a picture. We need him to act it out for us. It's a whole thing.
It's a big collage on the wall here. We're trying to figure this thing out. We got a couple of results here from the show. I don't have all of them. 7 matches here at the Louisville Gardens. I do know, once again, Jerry Lawler over Eddie Gilbert, and the Fabulous Ones defeating the interns on a disqualification at the Gardens. As we fast forward, we're going to close out this week's Regional Rasslin up to Friday, February 22nd in Corinth, Mississippi at the high school, sponsored by the Warrior Boosters. Tickets on sale at Lonnie's Sporting Goods and the high school office. I don't know what I would have done if I could have got wrestling tickets at my high school, but that's the way things were back in the day.
They were, and that's Corinth, Mississippi. That was right up the road from where I grew up. So had I known at the time, I could have went up there to Corinth. I'd have been bugging my dad, like, we got to go, because, David Haskins is going to wrestle Joe Lightfoot, and I got to be there.
There you go. Well, we got 6 big matches, or maybe 5 big matches in what you just said, on the card, and we're going to listen right now to promos from several of the men involved.
Okay, let me give you a couple of words right here on Channel 7 before we get into the action coming up down in Corinth. First, I want to remind you, Sunday, March the 10th, 8 p.m. right there at the Mid-South Coliseum. You can get tickets at the Mid-Continent Hi-Fi. Also, on Friday, March the 15th, Union City, Tennessee. Now, let's talk about Friday, February the 22nd. I'm talking about coming up next Friday at Corinth at the high school, sponsored by the Warriors Booster Club. And we're talking about a match that's going to have 6 big ones. We'll give you those in a little bit. One of the matches we're talking about is going to have the Terminators going against the Fabulous Ones, Stan and Steve.
Who are you, huh? You're nobody. You've never challenged anybody like the Terminators. We're going to make meat out of you boys. Pretty girls ain't gonna be looking at you now, are they?
I'm gonna break your back. Bust you up.
Now, okay, I hear the conversation. We want to see the action coming up Friday down in Corinth, Mississippi. Another of the big bouts. First time in Corinth, a barbed wire match when Eddie Hot Stuff Gilbert goes against Jerry the King Lawler.
I'm finally glad Eddie Marlin got off his rear and he booked a good match here in Corinth between Lawler and I, because Lawler's been running for me so much, Lance. I can't keep him in the ring, but do you realize what barbed wire is? I don't think City Boy Lawler knows. Well, I do. I grew up in the country. I know what barbed wire can do to you. It can eat at your flesh, boy. I can take your face and run up and down that barbed wire till the blood flows like wine, brother, and that's what I'm going to do, King. It's going to be between me and you, and I'm going to come out the winner.
That's Friday night right there in Corinth. You got to be there.
With a friend you can turn to, WBBJ TV, Jackson.
7's Championship Wrestling. Hey, again, let me remind you, this Sunday, March the 10th, 8 p.m. will be the next action in the Jackson Coliseum. And also on Friday, March the 15th, Union City Championship Wrestling coming your way. All right, something before that. I mean, like next Friday, right down there in Corinth at the high school, it's going to be a whale of a night with 6 big matches in there that'll have Haskins going against Lightfoot, the Daydreamers going against Playboy Frazier and Jerry Bryant, Adrian Street and Danny Davis facing Tojo Yamamoto and Jerry Jarrett. It'll be a Mid-America title defense for Iron Mike Sharpe against Lanny Poffo. And then the Terminators will be facing the Fabulous Ones, Stan and Steve. The final match, Jerry Lawler, Eddie Gilbert going in a barbed wire match right there in Corinth. First time they've seen the barbed wire in Corinth.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. This entire card is a super night of action. I don't know if the people realize there that you mentioned Jerry Jarrett is going to be teaming back with Tojo Yamamoto on the card.
First time in a long time.
Yeah, that should be a great match there. And also, I heard the Terminators out there running their mouth about what all they're going to do to Stan and Steve. Now, apparently, they haven't been in the ring yet with the Fabulous One. So, boys, you got a little surprise in store for you. Just like Eddie Gilbert has got a surprise in store for him. Now, he's been running his mouth, too, about what all he knows about barbed wire. Well, I've been in a few barbed wire matches in my time, son, and I know how to handle myself in them, and you're going to find out what it's like down there in Corinth, Mississippi, because I'm going to take you by the hair of your head, and I'm going to run you from one end of that wire to the other. We're going to see what you look like after that, punk.
All right, so there it was. Sadly, I made everybody listen to the Terminators yet again. Plus, we heard from Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler pimping Jerry Jarrett's return to team with Tojo Yamamoto. What an interesting duo that makes here in 1985, just randomly out of the gate. Yeah, so the card looks like this. I don't have results. I'll tell you guys right from the start here, but it's David Haskins and Joe Lightfoot, as you spoiled. Daydreamers, or I guess Constance. Wait a minute, go on the bicycle. Could be Daydreamers. I don't really know. Doesn't really fucking matter. They're taking on Stan Frazier and Jerry Bryant. Then from there, Adrian Street teaming with Danny Davis. Very odd. Where's Ken Wayne? Battling Tojo Yamamoto and Jerry Jarrett. What an odd match that is.
Yeah, the mismatched team of Adrian and Danny Davis. And then you got the legendary duo back together again, Tojo and Jerry Jarrett, right there at the high school in Corinth, Mississippi. So that's fun.
Surprised Jerry didn't just fly Tiger Mask into team with Tojo.
Or just slap a tiger mask on Ken Wayne, and that would explain where Ken Wayne was.
Well, there you have that too. Also on the card, Mike Sharpe taking on Leaping Lanny Poffo. The Terminators going up against the Fabulous Ones. What do you think Stan and Steve thought of that one? Never again, do you think?
Gosh, yeah, I'm sure they, since Jerry Jarrett was there and working, I'm sure they come through the curtain and like, hell no, like, not never again. Never.
That is one match that I would have loved to have seen.
Oh, I would too. I mean, you imagine pulling a stunt like, I don't know that the Fabs really would have done a slide through spot like that, but just them going for a pretty basic babyface spot like that, and then one of them just completely screwing it up. Like, I could just see Kern just beating the brakes off of him. And Stan Lane's no slouch either, but still.
No, yeah, I could see an ankle pick, try to stop me from sliding through. I could see either one of those guys, taking one of these guys down, just stomping him in the head and making the cover. And I feel like that's probably what happened here. We got about 3 minutes before these guys go, we ain't doing this shit. Because, they're not at the studio, so this might be the first time they're encountering the Terminators. I'm sure this one did not go very long.
No, not at all. As soon as you started running down the card and I heard Terminators and Fabs, I was like, whoo, that must have been a one and done of they didn't know what they were getting lumped into. I bet you can't find hardly any results where that happened more than once.
Oh, yeah, I'm certainly going to keep my eye out for it anyway as we conclude the night here in Corinth. It's once again another barbed wire match between Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler. No doubt the King goes over there. So, that'll wrap things up here this week in the Memphis territory.
That's kind of wild to me. We're doing a match at the high school gym sponsored by the Booster Club, and we're doing a barbed wire match. I know that's not the Puerto Rico, IWA Japan barbed wire match, but still, it feels a little excessive. And
I could be wrong, but, I feel like I had this thought before, so I feel like this is not the first high school they've ran the barbed wire in.
Yeah, it seems like it has happened before, and it's still just jarring when I see that. Like, really, we're doing that in the high school? Like, geez.
Yeah, well,
but I think that also gives you a lot of insight to just probably how bloody or how rough these barbed wire matches were that it was even considered to do there.
Well, yeah, Jerry Lawler's not working nightly blood fest here with the barbed wire, I'm sure.
No, I'm sure it wasn't a Carlos Colon,
Abby
Abdullah the Butcher, barbed wire extravaganza.
Indeed not, I should say. But that's going to do it, Gene. We're going to wrap it up here with this. Episode 50 in the books. The milestone behind us. On to episode 75, episode 100 down the line. But that was a fun-filled episode of TV for all the wrong reasons, for the most part. But it seems to be the continuing story here thus far in 1985.
It really does. That's the story we're getting so far, and it does kind of make me a little bit sad that episode 50 had to focus on Jimmy Hart leaving the territory and the Terminators being in the television main event. It does not bode well for Memphis. They are really going to have to make a comeback to pull this out. But, I got faith in them because, man, I really would have loved to have seen both of those Adrian Street, Randy Savage matches that we talked about here today.
Oh, for sure. Hopefully they pop up on the upcoming, the Jackson TV, the arena shows. Yeah. I haven't watched ahead, so I'm hoping at least one of them pops up on there.
Absolutely, because I really would love to know how Street won that no disqualification match, because that is not the result I expected to see.
No, me either. But, you talk about making a comeback here, the territory making a comeback. Hey, the wrestling hotline is back up and running. So, it starts there and, we'll evolve. We'll continue. We'll see who pops into the territory in the next several weeks. Sadly, we lose the Dirty White Boys, who were just gaining a little ground, I thought. Of all the teams, if you ask me who was leaving, I think I would have picked every team in the territory besides the Dirty White Boys, obviously in the Fabs.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the Dirty White Boys are on the train out of town. The Nightmares have now lost, and they're headed out of town, and can only assume that they've got their sights on Continental, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see where they pop up. But the one team that we want out of there more than anything beats the Dirty White Boys in a loser leave town. I can't tell you if I was in Memphis at the time and I saw that abortion of a tag match on television. I will say, not in the way they intended, but I would have went and plopped down money for a ticket just because I would have been 99.9% sure that the Dirty White Boys were going to beat them and run their ass out of town. I'd want to be there to see it live. I can't tell you how disgusted I would have been. Even though Lawler beat Gilbert and even though the Fabs beat the interns for the titles, I still would have left there absolutely disgusted seeing the Terminators run the Dirty White Boys out of town. Lord.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have got over that segment of the show, to be honest with you. I certainly didn't see it coming until, I read the results whenever, a few weeks back. I was like, wow, really? These guys are still here. Okay. But yeah. Whew. Well, that's going to wrap it up here this week, guys. Another week of Memphis 1985 in the books. February continues on. We're going to be closing that out soon and move on to the month of March. I think that's how the calendar works. But before we get to that, Gene, anything you'd like to add here at the end of the show?
I'm super honored and excited to have been a part of the 50th episode of Regional Rasslin, and it's rolling on strong, and Memphis is going to come around. Great stuff going on in Georgia and the Universal Wrestling Federation. Love listening to those shows and keeping up with what's going on there. And I don't have anything to announce now, but I hope to have something to bring up here soon about a little project I've got in the works that should be fun for people that enjoy what we're doing here on Regional Rasslin. It may be in that vein, but we won't spoil it just yet until I get all my ducks in a row.
Sweet. Sounds awesome. I love it. Don't forget, guys, the Patreon, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Right now, the $5 all access tier is featuring our early video cast as we get things, as you say, ducks in a row, kind of making sure everything works properly. We've got WrestleMania 4 parts 1 and part 2 coming very soon. You guys are going to be having a fun time along with us as we go back and watch the old championship tournament, the battle royal, and everything in between. As, Bret Hart says, Bad News Brown, you're a double cross. So can't wait to get to that match. Kicks it all off, and we're just going to take it all the way through to the brand new champion crown. We're going to have a fun time with that on Patreon at the video cast. Looking forward to doing that with you, Gene. That'll be up in the next week or so.
Hey, after listening to the definitive edition of the Wrestling Memory Grenade covering parts 1 and 2 of WrestleMania 4, I'm super psyched to get a chance to sit down with you and watch and relive WrestleMania 4 video-wise. We did it audio-wise, and you did a great job, and all the great guests you had on for that. And now for us to get to sit down and actually see the things we talked about, I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, going to be a fun time, a fun watch along, guys. So stay tuned for that. Again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, all part of that $5 all access tier right now. Join today as we wrap things up here this week. Gene, I want to thank you so much for spending the last couple hours here with me on the program and looking forward to continuing on. Can't wait to see, I believe the Macho Man I sneak peeked ahead, just kind of skimmed the next episode. I think finally Randy Savage going to invade the studio, so I'm looking forward to that.
How's that for a teaser, folks? If you were getting down on Memphis 85 and you were starting to give up on it, Ray just gave you a great reason to get on the YouTube channel, get on the Wrestling Memory Grade YouTube channel. The episode's there. Go ahead and check it out, and then join us when we discuss it right here on the podcast.
I like it. So until then, Gene, I just want to thank you so much for being part of the show, being part of Regional Rasslin, being part of the WrestleCopia family. We are so happy to have you. It's always a pleasure to have you on board, and another one in the book. So thank you so much for doing this with me here this week.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me, and excited to keep this train rolling.
All right, guys, that'll do it here this week, but we shall return for more Georgia 81, Memphis 85, and UWF 86 very soon. I'm your host, Ray Russell. You can follow me on X at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And don't forget that $5 all-access tier over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. And until next time, we'll be back soon with more Regional Rasslin, where we talk the territories.